I would say direct lithium extraction technologies are an enormous promise, which could deliver a lot of value. A lot of value because if you think it from a practical point of view, you could first of all increase the yield. So instead of having recoveries of 50, 60%, go to 90%. So with the same amount of brine, you could produce 50% more. But moreover, if you really, the theory works that you extract brine, you take out the lithium and re-inject the brine, well, you could maybe have a net extraction of, maintain the net extraction, but extract 10 times more brine, and therefore produce 10 times, 1.5 times, so 50 times more lithium than what is being produced today.
My next guest is Daniel Jimenez. He's the founding partner of ILI Markets. Daniel, welcome.
Good morning, James. How are you doing? Thank you for having me here.
Daniel, can we start? Give us an overview of what your firm does.
Well, we are a consulting firm focused on lithium and iodine, and on both chemicals. We do have a central activity, which is market intelligence. We generate some quarterly market reports through subscriptions, which we do on a one-to-one basis presentations to our clients. In the lithium space in particular, we have clients going from lithium miners to OEMs and everything in between, as well as the investment community. And then as a second leg, we do also M&A support with a network of process engineers, operators, so we can value as lithium assets in particular in a very thorough manner, based on our practical experience. And basically, we have myself more than 20 years of lithium experience, having worked for SQM for a very longer part of my professional career.
I see. Are you based in Chile?
I'm based in Chile, in Santiago, yes.
Oh, very interesting. Well, I have so much interest in talking to you about so many other things, among them lithium. But okay, so the situation is very interesting globally in that, 52% of the world's lithium is coming from hard rock sources in Australia primarily, and then Chile is, I think, 32% of the remaining world supply?
That will be the number, more or less, yes.
And yet, recently elected government is, widely perceived as leaning towards the left, and there's been some political noises made about the limitation of future permitting of solar evaporation ponds, which suggests a constriction on the ability of Chile to grow its market share globally. Is that the case?
Well, I would say, yeah, for one part, you're right. I mean, the elected government is a left-wing government, and for that reason, probably less pro-business, which is making investment decisions more complex in this country. But more than the elected government, what really worries us today is the drafting of a new constitution, which is turning out to be the draft, which apparently is going to be proposed to be voted, is a very, how would I call it, like a very non-serious constitution. And honestly speaking, my only hope is that proposal is rejected. Well, it will go to a vote by probably mid-September. My feeling is that it's going to be rejected, and that then a new process will have to start to draft eventually another type of constitution. But on the government itself, on the current government, well, it operates on the regular democracy we have in this country, and as it is elected, next time we might have another type of government, and we have had left-wing governments in the past. So, I mean, it's not of a major concern to me longer term. Now, with regards to your question on solar evaporation, the subject of solar evaporation is a subject which is being brought up mostly by companies developing direct lithium extraction technologies. stating that their technologies are greener than a solar evaporation process, which I would seriously dispute. Solar concentration processes of brines is something which happens naturally in a salt lake, and as long as that the rate of net evaporation remains within the levels of the recharge, of the natural recharge of the salt base of the basin, there should not be any environmental damage. And that's how Atacama and also Hombre Muerto in Argentina have operated now for 25 years with no significant impacts. So this is something which the lithium producers, SQM, Albemarle, and Livent, have actively showing to the investor communities, to OEMs, to consumers at the end of the day, who need to understand that this can be developed in a sustainable way. Now, if a DLE technology develops and is successful, well, that opens, of course, a lot of more opportunities, because indeed, with the conventional technology, you have lower yields, but more importantly, you have a limitation in how much net brine extraction you can have, because of what I explained earlier. The net brine extraction needs to be less than the natural recharge into the basin. So, yeah, and with regards to policies prohibiting solar concentration processes, no, I'm not aware of any of those proposals, at least locally. Yeah.
So the argument for DLE being greener is predicated on the idea that it uses less fresh water, in my understanding, and and everybody I've talked to in the industry has a different view on that, because the water that is contained in the brine as it comes to the surface from, for example, the Atacama salars, it's the water content that is already present with the brine, and so evaporating it is not a loss of fresh water, it's the solar removal of the water that is in the brine. So it's not potable water that you're consuming anyways, is it?
That is right. I mean, the H2O, the water contained in the brine, will never become fresh water or potable water unless it goes through an evaporation process. But what indeed is true is that if you extract more brine, salty, so the salty brine, than what is the natural recharge of the basin, you will have impact on the surrounding. And the surrounding of the salty brines is fresh water, which doesn't mix because of density differences. But if you make this salt water smaller, well, it will affect the water table of the surrounding freshwater levels. That's why you need an equilibrium. But there is naturally an equilibrium. The salt lakes evaporate permanently with or without a solar evaporation a concentration system, you see?
So then is it an incorrect presumption to say that direct lithium extraction technologies are an important part of the future of salar development in Chile?
I would say direct lithium extraction technologies are an enormous promise, which could deliver a lot of value, because if you think it from a practical point of view, you could, first of all, increase the yield. So instead of having recoveries of 50, 60%, go to 90%. So with the same amount of brine, you could produce 50% more. But moreover, if you really, the theory works that you extract brine, you take out the lithium and re-inject the brine, well, you could maybe have a net extraction of, maintain the net extraction, but extract 10 times more brine, and therefore produce 10 times, 1.5 times, so 50 times more lithium than what is being produced today. That is the promise. That's why SQM, Albemarle, everybody's looking at how to make a DLE technology successful. The problem is that they have not been successful so far, although they have spent years and a lot of resources in doing so. So the promise is very nice, of an enormous value. It could multiply by several times the current production levels of lithium, but it needs to work.
In your view, is the lithium price currently in the commodities market in the United States quoted at $87,000 per ton? Is that a sustainable price going forward?
It is. I don't know if sustainable can be called sustainable. What is very clear is that it is a price significantly higher than marginal cost of production, that it is significantly higher than any required incentive price to develop today a lithium project. So it's really the consequence of a disconnect between current demand and supply. And what do we know on the demand side? We know that the driver here is EVs. That today this price levels reflects that there is a shortage of lithium, so the consumption of lithium in EVs is more than the supply. That the consumption could probably be more than what it is today, and we know of chip shortages and how that is. And all the problems with the lockdowns in China, which have produced a tremendous crunch in the supply chains. And that's why in Europe today you have waiting times of more than 1 year and up to 2 years to get an EV delivered. So if those chips were there, if the EV production capacity was there, if the supply chains were in order, probably the demand for lithium would be even higher than what we see today. And looking into in the coming years, it all appears that the limiting factor in the growth of EVs will be the availability of lithium. What will this mean? Mean that, first of all, I think the prices will remain very high, and this means, I don't want to say sustainable, but this could well be that prices remain at these levels for the next 4 or 5 years. And at the same time, that OEMs will start to look for alternatives. I mean, this is a very expensive battery, no? With this lithium prices. So they will look for alternatives, reducing size of batteries, looking for alternative chemistries, not using lithium, sodium ion. So we're going to see that. And on the supply end, how quickly can the industry solve that problem? And I think there's not a quick solution. And essentially because here the crunch is at the mining level. And mining takes, from discovery to production, it can take anywhere from 6 to 10 years. So the world is not prepared today to very quickly increase its output, because basically all the incremental output we will see over the next 4 or 5 years are things which today we understand, we know, and we know how much they can do really. And that appears to be certain amount of supply by 2025, 26. And that will be the limit of supply until that time. What happens after that, 27, 29, 30? Well, that will largely depend on all this investment which is going into the ground today. And it is very likely that by that time, yes, there will be this incentive prices. These prices today are so much incentive to produce more capacity, to accelerate projects, that we will see a picture which we cannot really imagine in terms of supply in 5 or 6 years from now. But that's why I think when you ask me, is this sustainable? Yes, I think we will most likely have very high prices over the next 4 years. Beyond that, I do not dare to say, because that will largely depend on first of all, on EV sales and how that continues growing, but more importantly on how much the industry can really deliver in terms of incremental supply. But this will be in 5 years from now, not today, not in 2 or 3 years.
Sure. Okay, Daniel, that's a fantastic contribution. I really appreciate your time today. We'll come back to you soon for another conversation, no matter which way the price goes. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, James. And thank you for having me here.